What's up, guys? Derek, moreplates.moredates.com. Today is going to be a quick video on something you need to be doing to assess your hair loss prevention results as you go. So, a lot of guys, they don't notice they have hair loss till they've lost like 25% of their density. And that's just typically how it works because you have so many hairs on your head. You have tens of thousands of hairs, and it takes you burning up a lot of them to start to notice big gaps between them where you actually have diffuse thinning or you actually start receding and have totally dead zones. So what you need to do, this is the first thing, even if you have zero noticeable hair loss right now, you need to go get a hair catcher. This is the one I use. This has been in my shower for years. Basically, what this does is it catches hair before it goes down the drain. So obviously practical for not clogging your drains, but aside from that, I use it to monitor my shedding. So if you're not doing this, start doing it, because this is how you can assess like really minute changes in your hair loss, patterns of shedding, reactions to certain things that you're using for prevention, reaction to things in your diet, reactions to supplements, reactions to whatever. It's basically you're going to have a baseline amount of shedding. And as you get older and also as you add things in or take things out, you're going to notice that amount of hair loss changes. So for me, when I have a shower, every 2 days I wash my hair and I look in the drain. And for me, when I'm fully protected, I lose no more than 10 hairs typically in this thing. But there have been several times in the past where I used, like super physiological amounts of anabolics, specifically like DHT derivatives and other highly androgenic compounds, in contest preps and like photo shoot cuts and, just being an idiot and taking way too much stuff. There was times that this thing would have like 200 plus hairs in it every single shower. So would I notice that if I had to just gauge it by looking at my head every day? Probably not. But if you like are consciously looking at this thing to see if your shedding amounts are changing, when your protocol, your prevention regimen needs to change, what's working, what's not working. And you can just assess far more accurately what to do and what not to do and how your body's responding in general. Because there's no other way to really get a baseline. Like there's the hair pull test, which is basically you just pinch hair and you pull it out. And they say if you're like prone to androgenic alopecia, then you're going to pull out like 3 or more hairs every time you do that. But it's like, that's not an accurate way of judging things. Like, I'm not saying you need to like religiously count every hair in this thing, but it's very good to keep a reference of what kind of like your baseline is. And if you're losing more hair at a rate than you're growing, because that's how you're going to tell if you're preventing it enough, essentially. Because basically when it comes down to it, you're supposed to lose 100 hairs on your head a day. That's just how hair life cycle works. You're supposed to lose 100 hairs. This has nothing to do with permanent androgenic alopecia or miniaturization where you're like receding or anything like that. You're just supposed to lose 100 hairs. If you're losing far more than that throughout the span of a day, and you can keep a baseline reading in this thing to kind of judge when your showers are getting more hairs coming out or less hairs coming out, you can just make a far more educated assessment of what's going on and how bad your hair loss really is at the moment. Because even if you have a perfect head of hair and then you start all of a sudden you're noticing like 300 hairs in this thing every shower, you're well on your way probably to thinning or receding. And that's kind of like, more than a wake-up call, in my opinion, to do something. And, I feel like everyone should be on some sort of prevention regimen in the first place, but that would be more than a wake-up call. So anyways, get a hair catcher. major key for me, this is like literally what I rely on to gauge when things are working, when things are not working. If I decide to like throw in, a certain anabolic or whatever, and I wanted to see if my body responded poorly to it, I would just look at this thing, and within the next week or two, I'd be able to tell if my shedding amount had gone above baseline as opposed to before they had consistently been like 10 hairs a shower, and then all of a sudden they're like 60. Then I would know, okay, obviously my body doesn't agree with this compound very much, and it's not doing me good. So something to keep in mind, something that I highly recommend you do. And anyways, hope it helps some of you guys out. Please like, subscribe, drop a comment, hit that notification bell, stay up to date when I post other videos related to hair loss prevention or self-improvement in general for men. So anyways, talk to you guys soon.